Sometimes I come up with topics for talks, and sometimes, I haven't done this in a while, but sometimes I come into the Zendo at random and do something we've called Mountains and Rivers, which is just answering questions, responding to questions, I should say, rather than answering them. And so I think we could do that today, Questions from Sangha is the title. We could start with what's on your mind, what are you thinking about, or what can I help you with possibly? So if you don't have questions, I can always talk. I like to talk. Yes?
Neil asked a question during yesterday's Dharma talk about enculturating our baby.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering about how to find that area where you have an obligation to something but not to interfere. So like maybe you have an obligation to protect something or to help somebody but to not project onto that.
It's a good thing to reflect on, think about. And it seems to be better, this is why it is said in the sutras, don't set up standards. It's not saying you shouldn't have standards, it's just saying don't set them up arbitrarily based on afraid of not having standards. It might be better to not have a standard and actually watch the situation. The situations are constantly in flux and changing, and it might be better to approach every situation that comes up with just including it, being aware of what it is, and not immediately jumping to some kind of a threat that we have to stop. We have to make sure we prevent that from happening before it does. And so I think the situational part, be there, watch what's happening. Your child, who is a little over 2 months now, Rumi, is he's going to be, having had several children myself, all very much different from each other. They function differently, their karma's different, their disposition, their way of learning. It's just, I could go on and on, as we all could. So I think it's very important to train your mind, you and Senchu, and of course you're living in a community where this is the emphasis. People are trying to, using the teachings of the Buddha, trying to be more clear, more sincere, more genuine, more direct, more responsible. And I don't know if that can be done by just making a plan and with a bunch of rules and just following that. That's that can't. It's okay a little bit, but it can degenerate into a kind of fundamentalism where all we're doing is locking down on every idea rather than actually seeing the incredible spaciousness around every moment. So you would have some guidelines set up at a time that are kind of, don't even have to think about it. Just not going to leave someone that young alone for very long. You're going to watch them. You're going to watch how they learn and work with them where they're at. So a specific question might be good.
I'm wondering about, as we have here at the temple, there's a lot of forms that are not rules.
Mm-hmm.
But is it necessary to have more rules when you're dealing with somebody younger?
That's good. Well, I'm sure you've noticed that you can't really go by the way you were raised, and I wasn't even there, but I know most of us were raised with too much space or too little space, or just, but as far as being raised by a parent, your guardian, your caretaker, whatever you want to call them, in a way that's balanced, where they're really acknowledging your own individual intelligence and that you need to be nurtured in that area, and also, but not going in so far that you're getting in the way of someone's, because eventually that person is going to be the age that you are when you're taking care of them. And their hindsight into what was happening to them, maybe, it's dependently arisen, so it's hard to say things aren't as separated as they sometimes look. So I'm just saying they could be taking your inventory at some point about how you handle them, even though you thought you were doing great. Some people, especially religious organizations, want their children to practice what they're practicing. And I say this over and over again, and maybe I even bark it occasionally. Don't meddle with your children. That doesn't mean look away from them or ignore them or let them spin around, but wait and get your signals from them as to what should be done. This is what I told the children's, when children meditate, the little workshop, whatever you call it, we did in Kalamazoo here a few weeks ago. Was there 10 children there? There were some parents there, and the parents had asked me no questions, which was a little disappointing because I had all kinds of answers all lined up, probably about 15 or 20. And so I finally just had to tell them something. I was mainly talking to the children about, using their metaphors and language. But I finally said, don't meddle with them. If they don't meditate, then don't ever suggest meditation to your children. Let them find out what that is. Leave them alone. You meditate, and then if they come and sit down, good. But if you go meditate again, don't say, do you want to meditate with me? It's not helpful to them because their way of working with concepts and ideas and everything and so on are much different than an adult who can say, no, I don't want to meditate. There's too many things involved with that you're their boss. So it needs to be their practice. So if they decide they want to sit down and hold still and do sitting frog meditation, which is what I taught. Wiggling monkey meditation is the other one that I taught. And of course, that's the one I think they liked the most because they got to run around. And it got worse every time I'd hit the bell to say, wiggle, monkey meditation. I mean, if they could have flew, they would have. They were all over the place. Quite to the, I think maybe the parents may have been a little weirded out by that. But as we talked about at another time when there was one bell, the high pitched bell was for the monkeys, and then the gong was more solemn, and that was for the sitting frog. And after we'd done that, maybe half a dozen times or something like that, when we finally got back to the end of the night, they were all doing, contact awareness practice, moving around and bumping into each other, doing that when that Senchu was leading that. And I went and sat down and hit the gong, and it was just like a vacuum cleaner on each one of those cushions. They went. The adults were still trying to figure out what was going on, but the children came back and actually were little frogs. So, and it kind of shows you that it's about the awareness of someone, not about getting them to follow an order. It's as they say, fine line. So I would say the basic response to the question is just observe. And if you really need to do something there, the very situation that's arising, you will be able to work creatively. If you're able to ask that question, then you have the creativity to be able to have the willingness to be a little uncomfortable with not knowing what to do. Not knowing what to do is called awareness.
I had just a question about discipline.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we talk about discipline here, it's more about just get yourself to the cushion, or it's kind of a self-imposed discipline. Is there any type of discipline that should be coming from somebody else?
For a child. I think the attention and being there and interacting and the communication is the important part rather than shaking your finger and ordering them around. On the other hand, with my children, and not that I did so great, but I had such a difficult upbringing, let's say, that I kind of saw that probably would not be a good model to follow. So I tried to did a lot of thinking there in the 60s, And tried to think about how, and I read a book by A.S. Neal called Summerhill. Has anyone read that? I probably read 15 books a week. So anyway, this was a book on just the opposite, just completely letting children do whatever they want to do, no matter what. It was in, I think it was in England or it was in Europe anyway.
We had that on our shelf growing up.
Did you?
Yeah.
Summerhill? Yeah. Did they?
I never read it, but my mother was
Your mother read
into psychology, child
Yeah.
psychology.
Yeah. It's an amazing. And the fellow who wrote it started a whole school, and then his examples, like like I'm giving an example of the children. I hit the gong, and they all come back. So and his example to promote what he was doing, like I'm giving you an example, but promote what I'm doing, what I'm saying. His example was they were allowed to not go to school or whatever, and one child who all he did is play and build tree huts and climb around and run up and down and play war and everything. And then when he was 16, he found out there was such a thing as an instrument repairman, where complicated like an oscilloscope and all kinds of things. Found out about that, wanted to do that, and within a couple of years got the education he needed to function in that way. Something that would generally take a lot. I mean, went through high school and the whole thing, learned the whole thing. That was his example of people. They'll do it when they get around to it if they need to do it. So there was probably some other examples there too. So I think there's something to be said there. I think they kind of, because of this culture that he was dealing with, I think they kind of went the other way. So again, Buddhism, middle way. Take a look at the situation and see if there isn't some kind of a natural balance that could happen, that could just come out of your awareness of what seems to be out of balance, like the child is doing something they shouldn't be doing. If it's something dangerous, no explanation. Don't get into any philosophy. Just don't do that. Why? Because I said so. You all heard that one. So, and that actually works if you don't add to it. If you don't add anything on, make it more complicated. I remember, I don't want to go back through all my stories, but I remember if you have a lot of kids, I don't know if anybody here has, but you can't help but be biased. You can't help but have better communication with one than the other. And so don't lie about that, because they see it. They know that you, they might call it you like Melvin better than you like me. I didn't have any kids named Melvin. But, and you need to respond to that in some way that's genuine, and it might not be yes, I like, I love you all. Or it needs to be something where it's something that they could actually perceive too. It's just, I remember one situation between my young people, children, is that I said, well, communication seems to be better there. That's all I said about it. They never responded, so I don't know I've never had a talk with that particular one of my children since then, so I don't know how they took that, but it seemed to be that less was better. They're all very unique individuals. None of them, they could have been up there. I think they're somebody else's kids, or not mine. So, further questions about anything, actually?
When you were talking about when children meditate, and you said to let the kids find out on their own, or to search for that on their own. You said something like, if they sit down with you once, don't ask them the next time if they want to come. When does an invitation become meddling?
So it's dependent on the whole situation in its entirety, so I can't give you a description of when it would be, but it is a time when you're interfering with the very volition that the young person is trying to develop out of their understanding of their environment and their situation and their relationships. So so you have to be fairly aware yourself of how much, if you're not taking responsibility for your own negativity, and that means not trying to get rid of it, not trying to explain it, and doing nothing but not ignoring it. If you're just there, it's just there. So you're not separate from anything. You're not separate from the window. You're also not separate from your own negativity. And if you continue to try to find methods for getting, then you'll treat your child or any other person with some kind of attitude of they need correction or something needs to be adjusted. Nothing needs adjusting. More? You follow me? Can you paraphrase what I just said?
I was a little distracted from the movement in the room.
Do you know how incorrect that is? I just thought I'd take a swipe at you.
How
Joseph.
do we tell the difference between meddling and setting limits?
Well, the limits are based on how you're working with the whole situation. Like you say, some things you're going to have to set limits on. There's no way, but don't have any philosophy behind it. Just have it very simple, so there can be any kind of discussion you have about it, and your children are sitting right here. So don't back it up with any kind of validation. But just say this is what it is. So, for instance, I don't think of something. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I've told Marlena that I would like her to participate in a Sangha.
Yeah,
So,
you shouldn't do that. Sorry to correct you in front of your daughter.
why not?
Should be her. She needs to decide what she wants to do. I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm always happy to have any children here, but you asked me,
Yeah,
so I'm saying.
but when you say that there should be no philosophy behind it, like, to me, that's a limit that has just arisen, that I see that it has to be done, so I've gone with it.
Okay, so the natural part of it is you come here. She, comes, but she stays in the other room, and that's fine. She didn't have to be in here.
Well, I haven't said that she has to come into here.
Okay.
I said that I want her to participate in a Sangha. It could
Yeah.
be of her choosing as well.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't understand that. Yeah, so, yeah, and she goes to church, so that's fine. So I misunderstood. I thought you meant this Sangha.
Well, this is an option.
Mhm.
This is an option.
Yeah. Less is better, more than likely. Tanya?
Is there value in rebellion, or is rebellion rejection?
Who are you rebelling against?
Just thinking the
Yeah.
part that we chant where it says like a fool, like an idiot.
Yeah.
And another phrase that comes up is religion is the opium of the people.
Mhm.
So the two contrast.
Yeah. Well, religion's the opiate of isn't that Karl Marx said that? Yeah. So, Karl Marx wasn't a meditator.
Well, it also seems to contrast with the self-gift that we talked about last Sunday. Well,
Yeah.
if we're just serving like fools, like idiots, is that our self-gift too?
So yeah, so the idea there is to kind of interrupt or meddle with the constant refrain of the ego that this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this is not worth anything. And the idea there is to encourage you to have a willingness to just not know, and just a willingness to be confused, a willingness to even feel like an idiot occasionally, because that's the language the ego will use to try to get you to stop trying to examine it. Ego does not want to be examined. Ego, self-centeredness, the me feeling, the me I'm right or me I'm wrong in some cases, does not want any awareness coming that direction. It wants to retain its apparent singularity and identity and sovereignty. And so when it says like a fool, like an idiot, it's trying to encourage you to just sit there anyway. Go ahead, and if you've come to this spiritual path, you've come to this path of awareness. Don't jump ship. Get on the train, or get on the boat, get on the conveyance, the vehicle, which in this case is the Mahayana path, and don't get off. Just stay on it. So sometimes we start to think I should go back and do this other practice I used to do, or I should leave the teacher and go back to another teacher I used to have, which someone just did recently. not a good idea. Not wrong, it's just that it's circular. It's just like you've gone and you've gone and you've gone, and then you actually evaluate based on your anyone's limited understanding, and then you've decided to change course and go another direction. Actually step off the path and step into a circular, it's called a rest area. Step into that. So that's that, and then religion is the opium of the people. It's just a political stuff, just talking about, he was promoting a particular way that society, he felt society should function. I'm not saying right or wrong, but to make that my understanding of that is what he was saying is that sometimes people use the structure of religion to believe in something higher as some kind of a saving grace so you don't have to investigate, just have faith in that, whatever that is. And then those who are in charge of all that, those who are at the head of the whole thing, they're going to run everything, and so you have to answer to them. You don't really look to your own understanding, you look to someone else's. And in this tradition, you actually get the help of a teacher, but if that teacher is trying to manipulate you in some way, if you have a strong awareness practice, that will probably show up. So any kind of call it opium, could be like a drug, I guess. You could use that as a metaphor. Might happen in some cases. Sometimes we talk to people whose belief situation is they just don't question anything. There's nothing at all. It just seems kind of odd, but some people, that's the way they want to function, and they should be respected. And in other words, hands off. Let them have this is a bigger picture than it looks like. And I don't believe in past lives either. And you know what's coming next. I know they're disbelieve in past lives. No position. This is the basic teaching of Nagarjuna in the 1st century, Madhyamaka. Everything is empty of everything, including Madhyamaka. No structure. You don't need any structure. All you need is what is here. You don't need anything extra to laminate on top of you, including Buddhism. More?
The rejection and rebellion is there value on rebellion? Like you said, don't do anything unless you have to. So that's in the possibilities to rebel.
So what's your question?
When is rebellion something we have to do?
What do you think? How does it look to you?
It looks like an impulse. It doesn't. If it looks like first thought, best thought, so that's what. Don't do anything unless you have to.
Generally speaking, a kind of rebellion, it seems the way you're using it is probably just really strong, self-justified, self-centeredness. I've got to do it my way, right? Or a feeling of being closed in or chained or blocked by something. But it's so very. There's no way to set it up and say this is always going to be this way. It might show up the other way around. There might be some kind of something that you would maybe call rebellion. Might happen in different areas that. It's just the way causes and conditions show up so the right and wrong thing is something as soon as we start doing right and wrong, then all of the awareness about the situation or investigation comes to a halt. So it's better to, what's the old saying, keep an open mind. How do you do that? You see how closed it is. And don't meddle with it. Don't try to open a closed mind. Yours or anyone's. Andrew?
Where we see one of the 3 poisons, are the other 2 there even if we don't see them?
Using those concepts, I would say, yes, it's just a way of breaking it apart. But yes, there's the primary one is ignorance, closing down, just ignoring the open spaciousness of everything. It's ignoring that everything is perception only. And then we get into a plus or minus in there that further shields us from seeing how much we're stupid. Description only, not a judgment. Yes.
Earlier to my question, you brought up the idea of being responsible for our own negativity, and often you look at or you talk about responsibility as the ability to respond. What is it to respond to our negativity if it's not hooking it up?
Just receive it, be aware of it. It's going to show up in different ways with different clothing, different postures, and so on. But the practice is about just like the sitting, shikantaza, sitting practice of meditation. Sit down, hold still, watch what arises in any of the sense fields, without doing anything with that. Takes a long time. Takes a lot of that practice to be able to slowly, you could say it this way, to slowly just slow down, that kind of low-level reaction to every damn thing that shows up. I like it, I don't like it, it should, I shouldn't, I shouldn't. It's all the addition and subtraction that's going on there. Takes a while. You have to really look at that for quite a while. And then there's no guarantee of anything. There's no the cause and the plus and minus cause and effect part actually gets transcended. So relative truth is relative truth until it's not. And so when I say until, I have to use some kind of a dynamic. So I'm going to use time. Until. That's like when you go the other direction with the plow in the field. Until. You ever done any farming? You kind of look like a farmer.
Sound like one.
Huh?
Sound like one.
Do you? I sometimes say if I came in and put on bib overalls and a big straw hat, had a hayseed out of my mouth and sat up here, everybody'd leave. Or wouldn't they? You staying here? Maybe I'll try that. I think I did wear a clown suit once, didn't I?
Cowboy.
Oh, cowboy hat. Okay. Must be I'm thinking about wearing a clown suit.
How is devotion something we receive?
I think we receive it in ourselves. I think we have some kind of realization. It's just as my understanding of it, it might show up differently for everyone. But my understanding of it is devotion is to my original teacher was something that I resisted, didn't want to do. I did not want to turn myself over to someone else. And actually I didn't really end up doing that, but just that kind of fear of what if somebody else gets a hold of my mind and controls me or makes me, or this becomes a cult or something like that. So I think it's receiving all the opposition to the devotion. When you act, because if you meet that situation, you realize that on some level, probably if you're even considering this a spiritual path at all, and you have a teacher, then on some level you really are resisting. It's a resistance you need to look at, rather than some kind of coming to a conclusion about it. Just look at the resistance. The resistance is that very energy of devotion. More?
What is devotion?
Love. But there's no lover, there's nothing, no one is loved, there's just that. You want to know how it's expressed?
Sure.
Face the wall. What does the teacher tell you to do? I mean, actually tell you to do.
Face the wall.
Yes. What else does the teacher tell you to do? Anything? face the wall. The teacher is just saying, look at your mind. If you understand what I say, you don't need to read another book. You don't need to listen to me. You don't need to do anything else. You can leave here and move to Montreal. But you would have to continue to do that. And it's very difficult to do that without a teacher, without a teaching, without a Sangha. That's why there's the 3 jewels, because it creates a strong container so that you can continually return to square one, return to beginner's mind, return to beginner's mind. It takes looking at a lot of falsified information in order to get to the truth.
How is resistance, I can't remember how you phrased it, but the energy of love?
Energetic, well, I don't want to get into physics because then I'd have to, I'd have to talk to, who would I talk to? We don't have any physicists here, do we? I don't think so. So then, but it's energy. It's just energy. It's like sunshine. Anything like that is it's a simple idea. It keeps us warm, but also can burn you. So there's a balance needs to happen there. Not too tight, not too loose. So we tend to, if there's confusion in our minds, if we keep having trouble with our emotions and our feelings, and we aren't able to be compassionate or be good hosts, or make friends with ourselves, that deep kind of difficult emotions that come up with no description, no label. You don't know what they are. They're just difficult, and it's very difficult for, on top of that, for someone who has not inspected their self-centeredness and not seen through or begun to see through for that to not turn into some kind of a negative propaganda, whereby we need to take that negative energy and call it this, call it that, or do something about it. We need to do something. We need to stop meditating. We need to meditate a different way. We need to join the Peace Corps. We need to do something else. We need to move to Montreal.
Does resistance take away from devotion or love?
Just you don't have to try to be devoted. Just look at your mind. Just watch your mind. See what happens in the mind. Awareness is like sunlight. Not to get romantic about it, but look at it. It's everywhere. Doesn't even ask permission. It comes right through the windows. It's like that. It's everywhere. And so when one begins to realize this, and there's still a human form happening, then it's no big deal. It's just ordinary. Tibetans call us a Tamagishepa. Ordinary mind is vast and without end. More. Robert.
Is there any delineation between devotion and faith?
Interesting words. I would think depending on the individual, they might come together more in one person and be more separate in someone else. Faith isn't, in the Buddhist sense, isn't exactly belief. It's more like seeing that there's some things that there isn't going to be any proof for. That the spiritual path is one, that the faith is not believing this is going to work. It's just that knowing that what's the traditional way of saying a path with heart, a path that something about the path has some kind of deep meaning to it that is not particularly propaganda, and nor is it a set of concepts. Hard to say what it is. The ego has trouble with that. The ego keeps trying to appropriate that energy for itself so it can get its way and it can move to Montreal. And devotion would be, I think, similar. Sometimes that's used, devotion to the teaching, devotion to the path, devotion to the Kalyana Mitra, or spiritual friend, companion in the virtue.
transcends into beyond faith.
It could. Yeah, it could. Sometimes the whole relative thing is gone. Read what verses from the center. Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, translation of it, and he basically says, of course he has a position of having no position, basically says that any position is, he basically does away with philosophy altogether. It's just this. And you're certainly welcome to go and have thoughts about it and construct all kinds of things. Questions?
Can we lock down on trying not to set up standards?
You could lock down, you could do any of that's possible, but it's always about awareness of what's happening rather than, some kind of, that never happens anymore. So the awareness doesn't do anything, but the phenomena moves this way and that way and this way and that way, and we agree and we object and we shut down. And at some point we stop doing all of that. Because we're no longer separating ourselves out as some separate entity who can win or lose or live or die or any of the polarities. You?
Are there any relative values that need to be imparted?
Sure. Don't kill. Don't kill.
How
And if
do
you do
those-
kill, be really aware of what's happening there. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
How do those become imparted?
I really don't understand your question. How do those, a bucket of them on you? A whole trailer load coming? How do you mean? It confuses me that your question is coming in such a form. So say it specifically. Don't be abstract at all. Just tell me, what is it? What is it you're looking for? Yeah, right. Yeah. What is it? You just received the Jukai, 16 precepts. Those are the 10 grave precepts. Don't kill, don't steal. But also, don't kill there's only one life which is unkillable, not to interrupt the manda of the present moment. There's no taking life precept. I don't remember the long form of the rest of them, but that's a pretty good one to, don't kill. But on the other hand, there's an absolute form of don't kill. Don't kill. That's a standard. And it's 2,500 years ago, they were all the different, what was there, 250, 300 or whatever, rules and laws and everything. And then the Buddha, he was kind of a smart ass. He said, when he was getting ready to die, he says, just keep some of those. But he didn't tell them which ones. So then the Theravadins kept all of them. And then, then later on, different schools, if you've ever studied any Buddhism over the last 2,500 years, it's extremely complicated. Schools and all the names have too many consonants.
So, without meddling, how do values get imparted over generations?
Okay. I think, well, they can be just a rule that you lock down and don't do this, do that. There's something you follow or obey, or it can be something that is that has more movement to it, that has that you could say breathes. Just like you can't, if you're alive, you can't help but kill things. This doesn't mean go out and go to Africa and kill lions.
So then is it the resistance that is the energy behind that?
Why do I have so much trouble following what you're saying? Is it the resistance?
Well, if you have a relative truth,
Okay, I got it.
that you're resisting.
I got it. Was it a yes or no question?
It's upside down.
Then no. But if it's the other way around, then yes. I've got to listen to this because I had about 2 hours. Well, yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Then what do you have to do?
Well, then it's the final,
It's the final daily Dharma gathering. Okay.
Yes.
Shoshi.
Something I was thinking about the other day was the qualities or differences or similarities between attachment or grasping or hope and the idea of intention, which looks like it has similar qualities. Could you say
Of
something?
hope?
Intention on one
Yeah.
hand and hope, or that sort of in my mind the concepts kind of bind together this idea of hope and grasping and attachment and clinging.
What's the question?
Can you talk a little, or are there any qualities that you can discern between intention and grasping, or
I think so. I think if you intend to do something, there's going to be some kind of grasping, but it's not about getting rid of grasping. If there's a physical form here, there's going to be some kind of grasping and some kind of pushing away, and there's going to be some kind of, you can't drive a car down the road unless you ignore all the trees going by. So there has to be that relative, you have to live in relative truth. It's when we start becoming political about it. The politics of experience will, with the ego at the helm, will take us in areas that can be actually not only harmful to our own, ourselves, but to others that we're living with and so on. So there's always some hope happening. When I say hopelessness, I'm not saying get rid of it completely. Just don't make it the main theme of your life. We've got to have hope, and we have a really difficult situation, and we have to have hope. Because that energy goes into that. Actually, it might be some relief because we're having hope, but we take our eye off from the negativity, which some people will call nihilism. And as Buddhists, we call it, it's just the way it looks. Everything is impermanent. Everything that manifests goes down or dies in different at different times. So I'm not sure if I help clarify that at all. If a more specific question, I'll try again.
no, I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
good. I think just opening a dialogue around these words is what I was looking for.
Thank you. Yes. So we have to go to Daily Dharma.
So we'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes in the hallway. We appreciate and depend upon your generous donations and financial support. We also accept PayPal online, checks in the mail, cash, and we can also take your debit and credit card. Thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho-san shi shi-fu, shi-son bu-sa mo-ko-sa, mo-ko-ja-ho-ro-mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.